Welcome, everybody, and thank you for tuning in for our session today, powered by MNP. Our session, Adapting at the Speed of Change, will discuss how organizations are adapting at the multitude of changes that we encountered in the last year with COVID, people working from home, reaching customers in different ways, going to digital solutions very quickly, and also looking how to use data and go through digital transformations in such a way that security and privacy of customer information is maintained. So my name is Adriana Gliga-Belavic. I'm a partner and leader in the cybersecurity and privacy practice at MNP, and I'll be the moderator of this session today. And with me, I have 4 leaders in technology, privacy, security, which I will ask now to introduce themselves. Sharon, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Russell, and I am the Director of Compliance and Privacy at Doxim. We are a customer communications platform that offers digital and print services. I have been in IT for over 20 years. The majority of my time has been within the software development industry, and I have been specifically working within privacy within IT for over 10 years now.
Jessica.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Jessica Couto. I'm the Vice President of Channel Sales for Vectra. I, too, have been in IT computers for over 20 years, focusing predominantly in the security or cybersecurity space. I have a master's in information technology as well, so well-versed in the technology world, and looking forward to meeting with you all today.
Claire?
Hi, everyone. My name is Clara Rosati. I'm the Associate Director of the Project Portfolio Office in Niagara College. I also have 30 years experience in the field of IT. Started off as a programmer, moved into business systems analyst, project management, and now I manage the portfolio of IT projects at the college. Most recently implemented information technology governance framework at the college, cybersecurity risk remediation program, and currently working on implementing data governance.
And Gwen?
Yes, hi, I'm Gwen Beauchemin, and I have over 30 years experience in the technology field from the good old days of Bell Northern Research and Nortel, where we were trying to figure out what applications would fill up all of the bandwidth that was coming on stream. And to that, moving in the Y2K, flipping over to government, looking at securing that same broadband too. So I've done design, architecture, programming, and then running systems and services. And the last job I had was CISO at Payments Canada. And now I'm independent with Tillet Consulting, helping out strategic direction in cyber for critical infrastructure.
Well, thank you all, and welcome to our session. So as we can see, we have a wide variety of industries and backgrounds. So maybe I'll start with the first question. So from where you stand, from your industry, what are some of the challenges and opportunities your organization faced in the last year? Should we start with Sharon?
Sure. So I am going to answer this. I'm not sure that everybody in my organization would think of everything as an opportunity. We did have some challenges, but I believe there were more opportunities. So the Doxim, although we did have the ability to work from home, we were mostly an in-office workforce, and our print facilities and our print production is obviously in facilities. So the sudden shift to a remote workforce would be something that I would say was a challenge initially, and supporting across both the US and Canada, because we do have offices across North America. And a lot of that support was around ensuring we had laptops and monitors, the hardware and the tools for our staff that could work remote. Were able to be set up with remote, as well as, for example, VPN. We set up our access based on least privilege. So we had a lot of opportunity for people to let us know that they could not access what they needed to, because we had locked down first and then opened up as needed, as opposed to being open and locking down. So that was a challenge initially. Some of the other challenges, I think that around the initial part of the lockdown and moving to a remote workforce were obviously the mental health issues and things that arose with working from home, just the change and kids at home and office hours or lack of office hours, et cetera, et cetera. I think, though, that there was a lot of opportunities. I know that for us, we had an opportunity to actually properly test our BCP and DR plans, and not with a tabletop exercise, but actually go through to ensure that everything worked from our production facilities through setting up our off-site emergency offices and or remote workforce. We were also able to implement, review, update our policies and processes and procedures. A lot of them, again, because we had not been a remote workforce, did not take into account that whole side of the business. So it was an opportunity for us quite quickly to do some revisions and some updating on all of the policies and procedures within the organization. Our Office 365 rollout was brought forward and successfully. The only way it could be is a successful rollout. So that was a successful deployment. As well, things like going paperless. It's surprising how much paper we use, and when suddenly we don't have printers we can access or connect to the printers at home, and we have our policies around not printing confidential information at the office when we can't shred, etc. A lot of the company went paperless quite quickly. And I think also mental health support, again, an opportunity very quickly. Also the ability to support and understand mental health and the breaks, the wellness hours, the wellness half hours. So the whole organization kind of wrapping their arms around positive support from a mental health point of view was a really big thing. We were lucky with our BCP planning that we had done and that was in place. We did not have any issues going into the BCP, and we were very lucky in that we missed no SLAs on our production. All of our print stayed up. It was actually quite seamless rolling over to the new way of doing things, because we did have the right things in place. So again, an opportunity for improvement, but it was nice to see that it pays off to do that prep and that planning.
Great. Anybody else wants to share from their perspective?
Yeah, I just wanted to share Niagara College being primarily a bricks and mortar institute. We had to switch very quickly to enable learning off campus. So a lot of the similar issues that we had, that Sharon mentioned, trying to get our staff off campus, but also we had challenges around how to connect the faculty with the students, making sure they had the right equipment. We also had to be able to figure out how to provide our student services to the students, whether that was, just asking questions around fees, or whether it was academic advising or health and wellness services. So we had a lot of challenges trying to get all of that up and running. And then we found later on, middle COVID, last summer, we had to bring a large number of our students back on campus. Niagara College runs a lot of applied programs, and for a lot of those students, they had to complete that applied piece of their study to be able to get their certificate. So we found that we had to, at the time, develop applications to do the COVID tracking, right? Who was coming in, who was going out of campus, when, so that in the event that we did have a positive case, and we've had a couple at the college, we were able to identify who was where and when, and we could contact people appropriately, or at least initially we passed the information on to public health. And then in terms of opportunities for us, you know, coming out of it, or at least we're starting to come out of it, we have a lot of opportunities. So like with respect to students, we were very much bound previously based on physical limitations, the number of classrooms, the number of services we could offer. And because of the fact that we had to work remotely, we've been doing a lot of things very different, right? Like we've been doing large scale recruitment events virtually. We've been able to reach, I think, more people and farther audiences that we would have not done previously. We're actually looking at changing the way that we deliver academic programs down the road, right? As opposed to that bricks and mortar mindset. So for example, I know that we were looking at having international students maybe do their first year in their home location, and then come to the college for the second year to do more of their applied components. So lots of opportunities for us.
No, that's great insight. And so if we are thinking now, obviously we had to come up with new processes on how to reach students or customers, new ways of new business processes on how to actually deliver the services. So from a risk perspective, did you find that the risks within the organizations have changed within from a cybersecurity and privacy perspective, and how those risks have changed?
Yeah, from a prior to COVID, cybersecurity risks and remediation around that had been actually a priority for the college. We had actually a couple of years ago gone through a full cyber risk security assessment with MNP, thank you. And they had identified, it was well over 40 recommendations to reduce our risk. And when COVID hit, we were probably 80% through closing the gap on those recommendations and putting remediation processes and systems in place. So I think for us, rather than net new risks, I think we had to just kind of take a look at our framework and the recommendations we had in place and just, you know, expand them. One of the things that we were already looking at was, we know staff work from home. So we had already looked at and tried to address, how do we protect you know, our data, how do we provide privacy, knowing that we do have staff working at home. So we just had to look at that in a different light and expand that out now to the whole college community.
Jessica, maybe if you can tell us a little bit from you work with a lot of different organizations through the products that you are offering. What have you seen?
Yeah, thank you guys. It's we've seen a variety of things because of our breadth, that we touch so many customers and partners around the world. You know, one of the challenging things we had to pivot to was everything being remote, as shared by Clara and Sharon. And for us, for example, a lot of our focus is enablement, right, to our customers and to our partners or to our prospects. And that requires, or traditionally required, face-to-face time, an ability to create a relationship. And I think we've all learned in our careers that the phones do great and Zoom meetings can do great, but that face-to-face communication just creates this wonderful connection, right? So when you go back to trade shows and events, you feel like it's a reunion or a homecoming, and you just have that great bond. And so even for us, it was, well, how do I connect with the customers and the partners? And I think we all realized relatively quickly that people were becoming Zoomed out or videoed out, right? So that became a really large obstacle. And I think as Clara alluded to, concern around mental health and just wellness in people's home environments and constructs. So we would do little things for our customers and our partners, like send them swag or little certificates or something for coffee, or just something that had our logo, but stayed in front of them and knew that we were appreciating them and thinking of them in terms of that connection, because it's just really hard to be on the phone or on video all the time. So turning that around, I think, was a great opportunity. I love that word, opportunity, by the way. It's great. It's nothing's a challenge. That opportunity to get creative. And in that term too, how do we support the customers if they're having a challenge or an instance? And I think people became more accessible because we weren't traveling, because we weren't necessarily away from our computers in a different meeting. Our meetings are on the computer. And so I think we can actually provide a faster response time in terms of support, engagement, kind of being a little bit on demand. I think the struggle might have been, how do you turn that off? Is it at 5 o'clock? Is it at 6 o'clock? What's the time zone? What's the customer? And so back to the earlier points of how do you change that, it really became, okay, how do we work in shifts? And so you really had to get creative, change methodologies, be considerate of everybody, but how do you stay front of mind? So lots of great opportunities to find new ways to do that. And I think a lot of people out there in the past year or so have found great ways, whether they be through wine tasting or bourbon tasting, different activities. Even fundraising has become, I think, another benefit to engaging customers, employees, staff, prospects, and partners, because people want to do good. I think we saw a lot of that even come out of COVID, and support each other through those motions. And so I think it's a great time to get creative, as Sharon said, evaluate, did those tabletops work? What worked, what didn't work? Make those changes. And, you know, can you provide faster response time or different methodologies to create and do that engagement? But for us, I found it really exciting in a way that I had exposure to so many different variables to come back with kind of a better approach throughout the whole opportunity.
Gwen, any thoughts from your side?
Well, I just think this whole period has accentuated the rub you get between IT uptime and having information security managed. And the IT uptime, when you're dealing with this remote work, has been winning, right? And so that's because you want your staff and your clients to be able to work forward. And so that rub of having IT security, it's just that extra layer that still is addressed as a, well, if we have time. And that needs to be so embedded in the day-to-day, but it's just proven to be just so difficult to make sure that you move the yardstick at the same time as your threat landscape has exploded with all of these home offices. It's been tremendous.
And just to pick up on that, so Gwen, so you know, all of a sudden we found ourselves extending the enterprise outside of our firewalls and into everybody's living room, such as mine. And how do we control that now? Now, obviously, in some cases, employees have never worked remote. So how do we help them ensure that they understand what's the sensitivity of the data and how do you protect that that data? So what were some of the things that you have seen your organization do to assist people, employees, in ensuring that that data is protected? To tell you the truth, in the first couple of months, what I found as a security and privacy professional was I was writing lists on tips on how to work from home, how to protect yourself and how to protect data, and that was pretty much what I was sharing weekly with the teams. What were some of the things you have seen?
So for myself, what I've seen is information being passed through channels that weren't sufficiently secure and would never have been allowed had they been in the brick and mortar space, but it had to be done. And that's what I've seen over and over again.
Anybody else? Like, for example, has so it's things like training has increased or awareness of other employees?
So from my perspective, we have a phishing campaign that we run actually 4 times a year with employees, where we send emails to a select group over a kind of like a running year. And if they click and go through where they shouldn't, it's not punitive, but it is an opportunity for training and education, which I think a lot of it, particularly when you're talking about emails and clicking through on that, there's a lot of education there still, especially when it looks like it comes from the president, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we did a little while ago is we did implement, anything that comes externally, we identify that. I think that's kind of common mainstream in a lot of industries now. We have MFA, we rolled out our VPN process. The other thing that we did is we encouraged the tools that we had at the college. So we had O365. We encouraged the use of MS Teams to store data and OneDrive to store data, as opposed to moving to, say, Google or Dropbox or something that is not really within the college's purview. So that's a few of the things that we've done.
Yeah, I'd actually echo what she's sharing. We did the same thing. We rolled out online training around phishing. That was actually one of our campaigns. We also went through some other training, and we created an alias for people to submit activities or emails that looked suspicious, so they weren't sure what they were and didn't want to validate. And additionally, we did a lot of webinars for our partners, because we do recognize that a lot of people are moving to Office 365 or the cloud and new infrastructures. Like you said, it's not just your 4 walls of the brick and mortar anymore, right? We now have boundless walls or endless walls or no walls, however you want to call it, but it's the cloud, and people are not familiar with the cloud. And I think we found a lot of people needed to be educated on what the cloud really consisted of and what that meant, because there's a lot of cartoons and influence on what the cloud may or may not be to certain people. So educating them on cloud security, I think, was also a big one in 2020, in finding out what that might mean and where do you store your data, like you're saying, right? Is it on SharePoint? Is it in Dropbox? And why do we do this? And definitely MFA is a big factor. And I also think one thing we beefed up this year, even just for our folks, is we created a security channel on Teams. And so when we see a lot of the incidents that are happening out there real time, real world, with other places or entities, we're sharing that information. So people see that this is really happening, right? We have had breaches and incidents even among security vendors and government agencies. And so look, this is what happened. And maybe it was just a compromised O365 account. May not sound bad, but wow, look at the damage. And so having true stories too, that aren't yours, but other people, will help make it stick and resonate as you kind of make some of those changes.
The only thing I would add, Adriana, is that along with the trainings and doing all of that, the other thing that we did is we did an active policy review with the staff and with different things, because training, doing the training and all that, but understanding, because some of the policies had changed with moving to the remote workforce and everything, and having people really understand what the policy was, why it was in effect, and why we were making the changes, and what they were signing, I guess, their life away to, in a way, right? Because you have to sign off on your policy. So just making sure that people were aware and that they were going through and understanding how those policies affected and why they were being changed. And then the training that went along with it was the piece that I would add.
Mm-hmm. No, all great points. And I wanted to pick on a couple of things. Jessica talking about moving a lot of information to the cloud and understanding what that means. And Claire mentioning that, as we went through COVID, we had to start collecting more information for employees' safety, but also for customer safety. So now we have the two sides. We are collecting more information and we are putting it in the cloud. So what have you seen in terms of changes to policies? Have we stopped to look at what are the impacts from a privacy perspective or what do we need to do now to go back and look at some of those things. And I think, Claire, you mentioned the importance of understanding where data is. So what were some of the things that organizations have started now to do to understand that, what the data is, what are the additional risks that we are exposing ourselves to?
I know from our perspective, we're quite new on the data governance train. One of the things that we have been, actually, it was an opportunity. We had a lot of staff when we first went offsite that were used to interacting with students. And I won't say that they had free time, but they had more time available. And we kind of jumped on that a little bit. And we took that opportunity to really do an inventory or take stock of our data. What data did we have? Where? How was it accessed? What should the retention be on it? What should the classification be on it? I don't think we've ever really gone through that exercise before. And it was really good for two reasons. One, we have an inventory. Is it accurate? Well, is it perfect? It's not perfect, but it's a great starting point, and it's something that we can build on. But the other thing that was more important, and we did work on, was that education factor, especially when you're talking about data governance. And why is it important? And, you know, the impacts of, say, things like breaches, or the impacts on the reputation of the college, and also the understanding that it's not an IT thing, it's a college-wide thing. We all own a piece of that responsibility around data. So that's been a really big piece of work that we have been doing over the last 8 or 9 months. And now we're looking to expand that out and really take those learnings and move them into a SharePoint implementation. So again, we can put some guidance and framework around more of the non-structured data that we have at the college.
Okay.
And I might add too that I think this has been an opportunity to really look at data when you sat back and where the information flows. But I also think that we're still in this period of business continuity, and we haven't done the full impact of what is going to happen. And we just haven't had the headspace. You don't have the talent. There was a comment about furloughed employees, so we're all dealing with less talent to bring to bear on these problems while we're in this.
Yeah,
And
I
I think-
concur. Oh, go ahead, Sharon.
No, go ahead, Jessica.
Okay. Yeah, I concur, Gwen. It is definitely lack of talent and man count or bodies to work on the projects. I think when you guys are talking about collecting all those data points and putting them together in somewhere, the other layer that we're running into a lot is securing that cloud, right? So the data doesn't get exfiltrated or hacked or compromised. Our credentials really scaling across 2 cloud instances. Are you migrating the data to the cloud? Where is it coming from? What's your retention policy? What's your storage policy? Your IT budget had to shift. Those are all things that went into account. And we're seeing even now that people, I think, thought they would be able to be there by now, and they're not, right? And that goes back to Gwen's point of not enough bodies, not enough time. There's not enough money, to be honest with you. And I think people are struggling with how to prioritize their projects. Is it MFA? Is it cloud security? Is it, adding another application layer? Is it hiring more people? That's probably the biggest challenge I'm seeing with a lot of customers and a lot of our resellers, is how to help their customer prioritize their projects, their security stack, what goes first, how can you get there faster, how can you get there with less people? And that I still see as a significant challenge for everybody.
And I just was going to add to that whereas at the beginning it was reactive the first 6 months, and then it was kind of like, okay, we're on the way out. We're now a year and we're in the middle. We aren't, we still don't know tomorrow. So although the new norm, as they say, is different than where we were a year ago, we aren't at the new norm. So one of the things we're finding is some hesitation on, okay, what really needs to be done, but we don't know tomorrow. So there is a hesitation on, let's work on like what we work on and how, and those things, because everybody's almost at a point now, whether the exhaustion or just, it's like, okay, wait, I'm not sure I want to do anything either, is something that we're being challenged with.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry about that. But if we look like what you are saying, I'm listening to everything that you are saying. We thought that we are going to go back. Now it's kind of, we are in this. We don't know for how long. Looking at the attackers and those that want to take advantage of this situation, we have seen tenfold the increase in attacks and fraud over the last year, using any kind of reasons, through COVID updates, through updates on vaccines. So organizations obviously need to do something to protect themselves. So what have you, and on top of this, we have all these changes from a legislative perspective. So we've seen in Canada just this past year, most of the provinces looking to increase the privacy regulations, and even the federal government now looking to align our privacy legislation more with something like GDPR. So what are organizations to do now to protect themselves? If you maybe wanted to share a little bit about what is your organization doing to understand the impact of all these changes in from a privacy perspective and prepare for the future.
So I can just say from our side that we are continuing, I guess, down the path of having a good privacy program, that no matter what regulations change, aligning with the GDPR, CCPA, and others, is if we have a good privacy program and we're ensuring that the fundamentals are there and that we have, we know the data, what data we have, where it is, the retention, the deletion, the consent, the collection, etc. And we have all of that, and we know, and we can confidently say if something, when we do our tabletop exercises and our business continuity and DR planning, we can say, yep, no, we know where that data is. This, if we're doing, this is an area of a potential breach, then we know, and we can do that. No matter what happens with the laws changes, we've got that there. So it's just adding on to that foundation and that solid foundation that we already have. And not starting from zero. So we're focusing on just ensuring that we have that good privacy program and that we have that good compliance, and we're ready, and we know that we're always going to be enhancing it, and it's a positive thing. And that's the philosophy that we're working from.
Yeah.
Now that's great points, and a lot of the clients that I'm talking to, they are looking at how do they move away from a checkpoint perspective of privacy and more into building programs that you can monitor over time and adapt over time, and adding that sense of adaptability to your program, so you can address any changes that might come your way. So I guess another question that I had, especially around cyber attacks. We have seen so much ransomware in the last year, all across industries. I think I see my colleagues in the incident response are telling me that they are afraid of a Friday because all the attacks happen on a Friday. So they've been working weekends since for the last year. So are there some technologies that organizations might be able to use to help them in this? We get all this information from our systems, but obviously there is a lack of resources who can do the work. So where do we go from here? How do we ensure that we look at all this information continuously and we make sense of it to ensure that we address attacks? So I was wondering, Jessica, if you maybe can comment a little bit about what are some of the things that you have seen in preventing attacks with your customers?
Yeah, the one thing that I think is resonating very well, and this really points out the inability for humans to scale, is the leveraging of technology, which would include AI and machine learning. These components can scale millions of times faster than a person can. And they can start to pick out those patterns, similarities, connections, and really kind of elevate that up and show you where to focus. Where human interpretation from time to time can be emotional, lack of data, they're tired. There's a lot of reasons why something may or may not resonate as a top priority, but the machine has all this data that's gone back months, days, years, and can connect the dots. And leveraging modern technology, I think, is really the best defense a lot of people have, because the hackers today, you know, they're well funded. There's lots of articles that shows you how much money they make, so it's still working. And I think to have older or legacy antiquated systems in place is just not the way to go any longer. It's not up to date. It doesn't leverage the newer technologies, the newer skill sets, the newer integrations. A lot of technology today too, I think it's important to understand that your existing purchase of newer equipment or newer security technologies integrate with other technologies. So looking if your SIM integrates with your cloud security that integrates with your endpoint security. Do they talk to each other? Is there collaboration amongst those platforms to give you an overarching story as to what's happening in your environment? And I think the third thing that's really important that people are forgetting from time to time is just that pure visibility. Think of a home alarm. If you're not aware that somebody's breaking into your second window because you're only monitoring your first floor, I'm still going to break in the second floor, steal all your jewelry and important information and leave without one alert, without any kind of notification. So visibility needs to be inclusive, and that does include the cloud, that does include on the network infrastructure. It's not in the brick and mortar walls anymore, but it's between PC to cloud and vice versa, and cloud to cloud. And so the biggest tip I could give a lot of people would almost be, if you were to build a brand new multi-billion-dollar company today, what tools would you put into place? Would it be something you bought 10 years ago, 5 years ago? Would you look at newer technologies? Because your architecture today is definitely not what it was a year ago, thanks to COVID. So machine learning, AI, new approach, new architecture, new technologies. I think all of that plays into what everybody in the panel has been saying, which is not enough people, newer cyber attacks, newer policies, newer procedures, newer data locations. You really have to look at how do you scale, how do you find all that with pure visibility across your entire infrastructure, and how do you prioritize that?
I would think too, in critical infrastructure, most of the industries are federally regulated, and they are pretty stringent on adding in cybersecurity as an element to be regulated, and with that, information sharing. And so that's the non-technology piece of this, is sharing our stories, sharing expertise across, being in that non-competitive space to be the better infrastructure, and as well, just the ability to be not the low-hanging fruit. So you'll never get to, I remember having many conversations about, well, we need this huge framework and it's very complicated, it's a 5-year plan. No, you just need to not have the apple so low as the norm. And so that is quite simple. Changing passwords. I haven't gone into one organization where there has been a fundamental that had a hole in it. And so I think sometimes we get overwhelmed with what to do next, or what framework would be the best, where we really should be looking at basics and seeing where your norm of your attack space is, and seeing that you're just a little bit ahead of it.
So we talked about technology and maybe the help of technologies in our fight against the attacks. Gwen, you mentioned the sharing of information and how organizations can stay on top of it. If we need to collaborate if we are to be successful against attackers. But is there a place for having cyber insurance as part of your cyber program? Yeah. Is there more, is there more? Are organizations more likely to be looking at cyber insurance these days?
I think that's an interesting question, because you'd have to first of all understand the risks associated with each of your threats. I think there is a place for cyber insurance, but full knowing that you're just going to pay when there's a problem and you're not going to actually address it. That's easy to say in a theoretical frame, but when the attack comes, that's a little more difficult to defend. It's what I found practically anyway.
Yeah, I think in the insurance, the cyber insurance, you need to be very clear what it covers and what it doesn't cover. And I'm finding from time to time, some of the cyber insurance also does not adequately supply a methodology or reimbursement. If you have newer technologies, they're still connecting back to, I'm just going to make an example, not accurate, but antivirus, right? They're saying that'll help, that'll stop the attacker. And you're like, no, that's really not going to be the one that solves the whole thing, right? We're looking for, if you have a firewall, if you have a compliancy checklist, if you have machine learning, if you have multi-factor authentication, there should be a more up-to-date kind of accuracy. If you've got these tools into place, you still will have a compromise, but to what capacity? And then what does that insurance cover? So I think a little bit it is they're maybe not sure of what's out there to kind of help you, but I do agree that if you do buy the policy, you definitely need to read what it covers and under what conditions, and then make sure you're meeting those, or just don't go with it.
No, and I had very similar experience with a client who bought their policy. And then they asked me to review it. And when I looked at the small print, I just realized that the policy that they purchased actually did not cover them for what they were intended to be covered for. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to understand, like you said, what is covered under that policy, because that small print sometimes can beat you if you're not paying attention to it. So I just wanted to change course a little bit, since we are at the Women in Cyber conference and we talked about the need for resources. We don't have enough people to do all the work that we need to do today. And since you are all very accomplished women working in this space, I thought that maybe you can share a little bit about what were some of the things that made you successful. Because obviously you all are working in industries that need more people. So what were some of the things that made you successful?
I can go first. There's not one thing, there's many things. So I will try and just, for me, I think one of the things was learning to be a good communicator. Having good active listening skills, especially coming up through business systems analysis and then project management. The other side of the coin is open, transparent communication, setting those expectations, letting people know when you have concerns, and just being honest and upfront. A lot of times I find people are willing to accept the unknown or something that went wrong, as long as you're open and transparent. And that's what I try and do every day. And I still don't do enough in terms of communication, but it is a big piece for me that I feel has helped.
I found one of the things for me was, as you said, the active listening, but the ability to understand and explain across the technical side and the business side. Either to understand requirements and needs on the business side, and how does that translate on the technical side, or what the technical requirements are, and how does that go back to the business to make sure the business understands that, and being able to link them together, that they're not two spots over here that are never going to meet, but they actually can come together. And not to take things personally in what I do, and in people getting frustrated. The wonderful world of IT is with information security and all of that, is that you're always having to be reactive, no matter how hard you try to plan. So people are often frustrated or tired or overworked, as we've talked about. So not taking things personally and being able to be part of conversations and understand that it's not you that's the issue. Potentially it's something else. You just happen to be the messenger, or at the wrong time, or before the 6th cup of coffee, or all of those things. So, you know, it's and being tenacious when you need something, to be able to go back and you know, just nicely, and oh, I just need that, you know, thank you, great, very much, or oh, don't forget, or, you know, not being afraid to go back again and again and again to get what you need, are things that I have found have helped me.
I chuckle at that, Sharon, because another word we call that is politely persistent. Right? Just don't give up. Yeah, exactly.
PETA is another one. Pain in the. Yeah,
exactly. But those are all great, ladies. I can completely agree. And to add to that, I think you have to have a passion in this, just like you do in any other career, right? You got to like technology, solving problems, puzzles, communication, collaboration, creating relationships. But for me too, I found it was important for me to have mentors that I could lean on. Different types of mentors too, right? Some might be more around career, some more just around my personality as I'm growing into my roles. And then I like taking that and mentoring other people that are coming up into the ranks as well. And I've learned even just other things from that component. And I think that leans back into some of my training that I like to actually conduct computer classes. I used to teach at Boston University years ago. And I think the teaching gives you another ability to learn that you didn't really think about, right? It's a different kind of intake. So mentoring is very critical. I think being willing to learn, being willing to react, like you said, kind of not emotionally, but rapidly, because this is definitely not a, oh, I'll get to that later today kind of a world where we're very much reactionary. And fire drill mode is kind of a common story. But I think that passion, the communication, the relationship, the thick skin, the puzzle solving, mentorship, I think these are all really words you can kind of take back in almost any career. But I know here in IT, not having as many women, definitely that passion and that thick skin will definitely pay off in spades.
I think for me, I agree with all of that, tenacious, persistent. The other thing is you have to look at a job as what do you need from it to grow as a person. And I remember having a couple of assignments. I was on some strategic development program, and I got this assignment. I couldn't stand it. And I'm going, oh my goodness, how is this going to be? I don't believe, I don't have the passion for this piece of work. And so how is this going to happen? And so my mentor said to me, you're going to have good assignments and bad assignments throughout your career. And what you need to do is put aside what the job is and what are you trying to achieve personally out of that. And that was turning for me, because I made a situation where I was unhappy into a real stepping stone. And I gained a lot of exposure to things that I hadn't thought about doing. And so you have to be able to do both. Be passionate, but take what the job can give to you outside of that direct technology goal.
Yeah.
And I was at a session yesterday, and I thought that was something I heard during that session. I said, you know, a male in this profession, if he needs something, he will ask for it. A female in this profession, we tend to think that we have to do everything, and we don't ask for what we need to be successful. So being more outspoken and asking for help also helps in moving your career up. And I have to say that I was in that point myself. So I always thought that I have to do everything myself to be successful. And when I started letting go and asking for help and asking for support, then my career has changed. So now that we are looking at you know, the workforce of the future, if there are women out there that would like to enter a career in cybersecurity, what would you recommend to them?
Just do it.
How? Like, what would be some first steps?
How? Do it. That's what I say. Just go for it.
Yeah, there's such a lack of talent in this space that if you find a thread of something that is of interest, go after it. And to be successful, it doesn't matter your gender in this field. You have to go after it. You're reading the books on the bus. You're doing this just like Dungeons and Dragons, you know, in order to find your passion to get what will work.
Yeah, and I would say there's so many areas and opportunities now within the overall field that doing that research and investigating and go for it. And if it's not something that you find that you like, but it takes you on a path and you know, you've got the fork to the left and there's another area that you learn, but that's where your passion lies, or you end up, the journey isn't a straight line, especially in IT and information security and all that. It is, you know, the more left and rights you make, the better you're going to end up at the end. So if you're looking to do straightforward, probably it's going to be hard to stay on the forward path in the sense of a straight line. Your forward path is going to be very zigzagged, and that's a good thing because you're exposed to more, you have more opportunities, you meet more people, but also you can find your passion because you're not pigeonholed into one tiny little area.
I think from my perspective, there's a few things. Most people like to share their experience and their knowledge and their understanding. So, you know, find somebody that's in the field that you're interested in and try and talk to them. You know, there's a plethora of organizations and groups for, you know, privacy, cyber risk, security, project management, all kinds of different things that you can join and, you know, become affiliated with the event today, right? The other thing that Jessica talked about is, you know, find a mentor, someone in the field or an industry that you're interested in moving into, and ask them if they're willing to help you. I mean, the worst that's going to happen is they're going to say no, but they'll probably say it politely, right? Yeah.
Yeah, spot on, Clara. It's asking is like, and I think back to Adriana, that's what you said, ask, right? It's not going to hurt. And it's funny you mentioned, Sharon, the different paths, because I think back, I started out as a computer builder, and then I went over into training, and then I went into sales, and then I was a sales engineer, and then it was to channel, and I've been all around the influx of the IT umbrella consulting. If I say Lotus Notes, you'll kind of know how old I am. But I think in that diversity of moving around is important. But the one thing I probably would like to let the younger generation know that's coming up into this is that it does take time. If you listen to the panel, all of us have over 20 years experience here, and where we're at through the blood, sweat, tears, entry level, putting the time in, taking in as much as we can and trying different things. And so I want just the younger generation to realize that it's going to take time, right? And there's no answer. There's no one answer. There's no one way to do this, but that's where that passion comes in, the asking for help, the mentor, trying different things, reading the books, all these answers provided all apply. There's never just one, but find that passion and just be that persistent.
And I think I would add, there's, you know, this work-life balance thing that everyone thinks we can achieve. I don't think we can. Sometimes work wins, sometimes life wins. I actually took 5 years off when my kids were really small. And I was terrified coming back to the workforce. But again, you have skills that you have learned through raising 2 under 5, going to work was a vacation. So you would take those experiences and that gives you persistence to succeed.
Yeah, and I had those questions quite a bit as well. So from women that maybe have not been involved in technology, and they said, you know, how do I get into this field? I'm not a techie, I'm not an engineer, but I think what we need to recognize going forward that this field does not require only techies, only engineers. And, you know, if we look at who is around the table here, we all had different backgrounds getting into this profession. And the future is going to require even more diverse backgrounds. We are talking about machine learning and AI and behavioral analysis and data and getting insight from data. So will be a lot of different skills required. And I'm sure a lot of us who were in the workforce learn some of those transferable skills that will be required in this profession. And so I think, like Jessica said, if you are passionate about this and you really want to get into it, just do it, because it doesn't really matter what your background was when you started.
Good point.
So, so I guess we are talking about we talked about technology. We talked about what do we do in terms of resources, and maybe if there was one question or one thought that you wanted to leave the audience with as we go forward, what would that be? Start with Claire.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure this out, but take ownership of your own professional development. So look at the skills that you have and then what skills you need and start to build from there. You can't rely on the company or to give you those skills to make you a rounded person. Commit. And again, this took me a while to understand, but commit to becoming a lifelong learner, right? So you need to grow your skills. You need to grow yourself as a person, and you need to keep your skills relevant. The other thing that I cannot advocate enough for is credentials are important, because it does show, it shows to the world a level of standard that you're, that you've met, right? It doesn't mean because you have those credentials, you're fantastic at the job, but it means that you've met a standard. And you know, when you look at the PMP and things like that, it means something to different, it means something across the board, right? So I would say take ownership of your own development and credentials.
I would say, especially going through the past year, and with being in information technology, I think that understanding and being aware of health and wellness, and for yourself, that we can't go with working remotely, with the blur of the office day and the home day and kids and all of the other responsibilities. I think the opportunity to take the 5-minute breaks, to do the breathing exercises, to just detach from work and detach from whatever and be able to be one for the moment is really important, because we don't necessarily have the options to stop and just go on vacation. One, because we're not traveling, but two, just, you know, even just be that mental break for your own mental health and wellness, I think is even more important now, because of the fact that we are much more blurred on work-home life balance. So if it means, you know, your Fitbit and once an hour you get up and you walk around, and you go to, you know, if you're in your house and you go to the washroom down 2 flights of stairs, or you're just taking a moment and doing the, you know, the 5 minutes of the breathing exercises, it makes a big difference. And I think that we need to be more aware of that, just generally speaking, because of the collision of our worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say advocate for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really big one, particularly for, I think, women in our roles, whether it be for your family, for yourself, for your sanity, as you're saying, right, Sharon? But advocate for yourself for sure. I think that's important. And it could be for anything: career, health, time, family. And I also think that you have to have complete faith in yourself and your abilities, and don't doubt yourself. And so I think that comes from an inner reflection of having that confidence. And that old adage we always say, fake it till you make it. Oh, believe me, we fake it till we make it as much as we can. So just go for it. Have some faith, you know, to have some confidence, illustrate outward confidence, even if you're nervous inside, and just advocate for yourself. And I still love the just go.
Yep.
And I would say find your passion. If it's not passion that you have for your day job right now, try to figure out what it is, because that makes 30 plus years just flip by in a blink.
Spot on, Gwen.
and I will just add to that. I think events like this are very important. Build your network. link with people, learn from others' experiences, build your network of supporters who can open opportunities to you or propose you for that next job, because that's very important. And we are all here to support you. We've gone through this careers ourselves. We know how difficult it was when there were no women to look up to. So if we could do it, so can you. So with that thought, I would like to thank you so much to all of you, our fantastic panelists, and to everybody who dialed in to listen to us. And have a great day today and the rest of the conference. Enjoy and have fun.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.